Hi all, I have a very exciting game to show you from the Women's World Chess Championship being played in Sochi, Russia. Mariya Muzychuk from Ukraine was playing Koneru Humpy, the top Indian women's grandmaster in the world at the moment, ranked 3rd, 2581 on the current FIDE rating list. So what could Mariya do against Koneru Humpy? Well, she played e4, and actually after e5, knight f3, knight c6, we get a breath of fresh air from the Roy Lopez. The third most popular move is actually d4, heading into the Scotch game. So after e takes, knight takes d4, the Scotch game. Black now plays bishop c5, and we have the main move, which is bishop e3. Also other moves, like in my recent over the board game, I had knight b3 being played against me. I was playing with the black side, but bishop e3 is the top move usually played. Now we have queen f6, which encourages now c3, so stopping white's use of the c3 square here. Knight ge7, which supports a quick d5. And also, you know, this queen could be quite aggressive sometimes on f6. After g3 though, white is securing the king side quite a bit with this fianchetto. Black reacts with d5. Now bishop g2, d takes e4, and this is a temporary pawn sacrifice. White just castles here. White would ideally want to take with the knight and gain a tempo actually on the queen, so stronger than just taking with the bishop. After castles, knight d2, black isn't in a position to really protect it. In any case, it's dropping off, and also the slight interruption on d4 is of no significance here. If knight takes d4, black could end up losing a piece like this, hitting the queen and hitting d4. So white is regaining the pawn quite comfortably after knight d2. So bishop b6. Now a further delay is actually imposed here with rook e1. Now black took on d4. We have knight takes e4 here actually, hitting the queen. Queen f5, bishop takes d4, knight c6, and now in this position white gives black a little bit of activity on the a file with bishop takes b6, a takes, so capturing towards the center. a2 is a little bit under scrutiny here. We see now an aggressive move, f4, which does actually provide some ideas, maybe later like knight g5 and maybe bishop e4 or queen h5. So f4 holds that e5 square. It's an interesting attacking move. Also, it means that actually h3 later and g4, if this is supported with f5 to follow, might be interesting as well. Black though is playing on the queen side here, bishop e6. Eyeing the a2 pawn. White for the moment defends the pawn like this, b3, and now we see h6, stopping white using that g5 square, which could be useful. h3, as though g4 is on the cards at some point, potentially. Rook a3, as though black is going to double and put pressure on a2, and also of course, if the rook's double, then there's bishop takes b3 on the cards, using the pin. Queen d2, protecting f4, protecting a2. Black plays now queen a5, as though bishop takes b3 might be on the cards now. White avoids that with b4, and we have queen a4, but still, there's 3 pieces now on a2. Is white in big trouble here on the queen side? Yes, it looks a pretty troublesome position indeed. White plays g4 though. So what does black want to do here? Does black want to take on a2 immediately? Well, black actually played rook d8 here. It seems black may have been slightly concerned here. If taking on a2 now, rook takes, queen takes, f5 might actually be okay for white. For example, the queens could come off, bishop d7, and now knight c4, and white has positional trump cards here, which can be expressed like this, with knight e3 coming into d5 on c7. That's pretty vulnerable, that pawn, that c7 pawn here. So yeah, the simplification perhaps with immediately taking on a2 here maybe doesn't do black too many favours. So this rook d8 insertion is interesting. Queen f2, and now taking on a2. So it seems white's queen side is dropping off a little bit. Rook takes a2, and we see here bishop takes a2. If queen takes a2, then perhaps white can fight on with queen g3 here, and the queen's quite away from the king here, with things like f5 and g5 being potentially dangerous. So we see bishop takes a2, and with the queen eyeing the bishop, actually white now plays a tactical move, b5, trying to lure the queen away from protecting the bishop and driving the knight away somewhere. Now perhaps this is a critical moment of the game. The knight perhaps should have gone to e7, but black is looking for threats perhaps, and wondering, you know, if knight e7, maybe something like knight f6 was perceived as dangerous. But I'm not entirely sure this is the case. If taking, black has various checks like on d1, black seems to be doing perfectly fine. Although the structure looks a bit wretched, perhaps this was the way to go, to play knight e7, because the knight is nearer the king here. Now we look at this position after b5, the knight actually went to a7 instead. It seems very lucrative, winning one pawn and going to win another pawn. Things are on schedule here, surely. Eating up the queen side, and then c3 later maybe. So white has to react quickly on the king side and plays g5. And this is now quite dangerous for black after g5. With the queen here and the knight here, the free pieces like this on the a file. Is this good for king safety? We're going to find out. H takes g5 was played. If here rook d1 instead, maybe white's okay now. G takes h6, and there's actually some dangerous ideas like knight f6 on the cards in this position. For example, like this, knight f6 is really dangerous. Taking, we have check, mate, that sort of thing. So that is pretty dangerous here to play rook d1 after g takes h6. Maybe something like this is still, after bishop f1, still dangerous for black. Bishop e6, rook e5, and there's initiative protecting b5 for a moment, and there's some initiative. So it's not so easy here for black. Black played h takes g, and we have knight takes g5, and it looks as though rook d1 should be played here, although it looks pretty dangerous. It will be pinning the rook to the king to stop rook e8. If rook d1 was played here, then actually white is not totally lost in this position, it seems. After bishop f3, taking on e1, queen takes, white has some play here. Queen d2 hits the bishop and d8, for example, and makes things difficult for black, like this, for example. Bishop d5, and yeah, it's tricky for black. It may be about equal, in fact, with perpetual check chances emerging. But yeah, in the game, actually, rook d1 wasn't played here. This is a very critical position to play rook d1. f6 was played. Now, can you guess what white played here if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, starting from now? Okay, the back row is a bit weak potentially. That's the clue. Okay, white played queen d2, a remarkable deflection, trying to get the rook away from the back row. So hitting the rook, not retreating light or anything. And things are looking a little bit more dangerous now for black with these 3 pieces on the A file. Black plays rook f8, and guess what now? Queen d2 supports a key attacking move. Can you guess? Bishop d5 check. Yes, it starts to look a bit dangerous now. Black took on d5. Queen takes d5. Check. King h8. And now you might think, well, isn't white's attack potentially running out? If white played, for example, knight f7 check here, then maybe king here. And then what? If check, king g8. Yes, there's things like knight h6 check, which may be securing a perpetual check, but white finds something much stronger in this position. If I give you 5 seconds, white to play here, what would you play with white in this position? Starting from now. Okay, Queen f7. Again, that back row is a real pain to black with that knight on g5. So if taking rook e8, mating, black actually resigned here. If rook g8 now, then there's queen h5. This is actually a diabolical position for black after queen f7. If we protect the rook, again queen h5, king moves queen h7, for example. What does black do here? It's looking pretty grim. Rook over here, we've got rook e8 check, for example, mating. So yeah, black had to resign here. So the top seed in the current FIDE Women's World Chess Championship was taken out here in this particular game. A nice attacking game. White took some chances though on the queen side, and yes, it shows one knight away from the king might be too much. If you give your opponent too many attacking chances and your pieces are on the queen side, this is what can happen. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.